Welcome to the Refine and Shine, the podcast dedicated to mastering the art of continuous improvement and optimizing every aspect of your life. I'm Angelina Rivera, your host, and together we'll uncover the secrets to refining our lives, our habits, and our processes to unlock our inner brilliance. Join us on Refine and Shine, where we'll delve deep into achieving more in life without the burnout and without all the stress. This podcast is your platform for a more fulfilling life through continuous improvement and personal growth. In each episode, I and a diverse array of guests discuss practical strategies for up-leveling every aspect of your life. From developing good habits and organizing your space to refining your mindset and personal goals, we're going to explore it all. Our guests share personal stories about the systems they've developed or systems they've used and the tweaks they've made in their lives when refinement was needed, allowing them to truly shine. Listen to Refine and Shine to learn how you can implement continuous improvement techniques in your daily routine, develop and maintain healthy habits that lead to success and satisfaction, organize your life to reduce the stress and increase your productivity, foster a growth mindset that propels you to new heights. My mission is to inspire you to take bold action, make positive changes, and become the best version of yourself. Whether you're aiming to elevate your career, nurture meaningful relationships, or enhance your overall well-being, Refine and Shine is your guiding light. With over 25 years of experience in continuous improvement, I help businesses streamline their processes, establish efficient work areas, and implement standard work protocols. I have trained over 600 individuals and teams in process improvement, optimizing workflows, and enhancing overall operational efficiency. Tune in every week as we embark on an enlightening journey, exploring paths to refinement and illuminating the way to shine in every area of our lives. Subscribe now and join us on this journey to polish your life and let your best self shine through. Thank you for joining us on Refine and Shine. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Refine and Shine podcast. I'm super excited about my guest today. We actually met virtually on a webinar, and then we got to see each other in person at an event about 2 years ago. And I've loved it. We've been able to remain connected, and I'm super excited that she's finally been on my podcast. I finally got her booked. So my guest today is Cyn. Cyn Sass is a certified functional fitness nutrition practitioner, a corrective exercise and movement coach, an athlete and first responder working through her own chronic pain and injuries back to vibrancy and performance. Cyn helps active adults in their 40s, 50s, and beyond unlock joy and adventure. And I say unlock because it's there. It's just locked behind a door of stress, overwhelm, pain, exhaustion, brain fog, low capacity. The list goes on and on. The traditional restaurant model or our current insurance model has gaping holes that many of us are falling through. Lack of communication, feeling unseen and unheard, dismissed and misunderstood. Being told we're too old, we're too hurt, that whoever we are in our pain and discomfort is somehow a new normal. You're just getting old, you're just all the other things. You all heard it before. We are urged to accept what has been told to us, even though deep down, we know something isn't right. We are in desperate need of practitioners and a system that treats us like the dynamic woman we are. Individuals who deserve the vibrant, active lives we desire, and to be treated as individuals from a whole body perspective. Because our bodies work together as a system of internal and external functions, and how we feel and move our bodies at a cellular level. Cyn has made it her mission to guide other highly active women through the journey back to a life of vibrancy, being pain-free, having fluid movement, gut and hormonal health through functional medicine, nutrition, movement, and fitness. Oh, wow, Cyn, that's so much to say today. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be able to share with everyone the new direction that I'm taking. I'm still doing the movement, but with the functional nutrition piece added in, and sharing why, and hopefully it will, touch some people who are stuck in a space and aren't unsure what they need to do next or what they can do next, and give them some ideas and information on how to move forward.
I love all of that you said because, this wasn't your life. This isn't something that was like 20 years, 15 years ago. You didn't think you were going to be doing this, right? Things had to happen in your life to get you to where you are today. So, can you take us back to that journey of all the things that you went through? And you don't just give us the abbreviated Cliff Notes version. And let's talk about what you're doing today.
Yeah, it's been such a twisty turn. Interestingly enough, I may have seen myself. There was a version of myself, sliding door style, that I would have seen myself absolutely in the fitness space from back in the day. And actually, when I was kind of leaning into this, when I was a bit younger, people used to send information to me, clippings about, "Have you heard about this person? Her name is Cynthia Sass, and she's in fitness." And she went to USF. It's the University of Florida. I went to grad school at University of San Francisco, and they would send me the picture, and I would laugh because she was a natural blonde. And so clearly wasn't me. But at the same time, it just our trajectories were a lot similar. So there's a time when I think that this would have been the space that I was in, but I made some choices as a younger person that took me down a different path. I was always an athlete. I was an athlete when I was younger, and I was into college, playing sports in college for a short time. And I had physical issues that happened to me throughout my life. So this story for me starts back into single digits when I was in elementary school. And actually, even before that, before I was born, my mom had some difficult pregnancies, and basically they were telling her, the medical industry, that maybe pregnancy wasn't going to be her ministry, her calling, right? She wasn't going to be able to have children. And she didn't accept that. She was like, I want children. I'm going to have children. And she eventually was pregnant with me after several miscarriages, and was able to carry me to term. And they were like, yeah, she's probably going to be sick and not be able to do things. And I wasn't sick, but I did have some physiological issues. I had a severe curvature of the spine, which today is just known as lower lumbar lordosis, right? It's just that
Mhm.
sway back. You have a tilted pelvis. But back then it was a big deal. Like, they actually, I lived in a hospital for a few months because they wanted to do a muscle biopsy to make sure that I didn't have muscular dystrophy at the time. And I was on living, uh, having school there because I was there for so long because I couldn't walk. That I was living with a lot of the kids who had leukemia and things like that. But it was a really amazing time because there was so much joy in that area. There was so much sadness happening that they created joy. And so at a time when I'm being told that, I have these issues and I probably won't be able to be a very active kid. And at this time when all these kids are, we're living on a in a ward that's not, the prognosis isn't good, and we had so much joy. I was introduced to the idea that things don't always have to be the way that they seem, and they don't have to always be the worst case scenario at a very young age. And I didn't know it at the time, right? But it became something that stuck in me, that I think got me onto this path. So when I came out of the hospital and they were like, she's fine, but she probably won't be able to do much. I was in those braces because I was also knock-kneed severe and pigeon-toed. I was in the braces like that you see on Forrest Gump.
Mhm.
And But I didn't want to wear them. I was active. I wanted to do things. My mom also was like not hearing it. So she put me into gymnastics. She put me into dance. She put me into all these things. And I don't know if you've been involved in gymnastics or dance or any of
Mhm.
that, but they work a lot on balance. They work on physiological movement patterns. They work on posture. They work on all of these things that became incredibly important for my body to get into a functioning movement pattern that it wasn't naturally doing. I was able to learn that. Again, something else, that kind of a little seed that was planted into my head when I was young. So I get home, and my parents were told to, keep me on bed rest and not to let me go to school. But I wanted to go to school and I wanted to play. And so I wasn't having it after a couple of days and snuck out and went to my school. And my parents had no idea. The school called and was like, "Why didn't you tell us that she was coming back to school?" And they were like, "What are you talking about? She's in the room." And they were like, "No, she's here at school." And so my parents rushed down there, and I was out there playing and whatever. And so they were mortified, but they were like, "Well, she really wants to be here." I kept sneaking out, so they were like, "Just let her go to school. At least we know where she's at, and we don't have to worry about her, in traffic and whatever trying to get to school." Because I was like in the first grade. I was young, so hopping fences and things with these stitches in my back. Right, I had like 12 stitches in my back, and so finally, my dad tried to scare me about breaking the stitches, about scars and things like that, and I just still wasn't hearing it, and I played, and back then, our school backed up to a farm, so, we played with horses. There's a giant oak tree in the middle of the playground. I was climbing it. Back then, we had tambark, not sand, so I don't know if you remember those little pieces of chunks of wood.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're playing around in that. They're slippery. And I was on the bars deciding that I wanted to do some gymnastic move. You kind of swing around and then you flip off of it and land. And I was doing my little gymnastic stuff. Did it multiple times, and then on this particular time, I landed and slipped in the town bark and laid out flat on my back and busted all my stitches. And I don't remember much about it except that, I didn't wanna be my parents were freaking out, right? They're trying to get me to the hospital. My hospital was 40 miles away on the freeway across a bridge. And so, I was screaming. I didn't wanna be on any roads that I could feel. And, my parents were like, "We have to get on the freeway because there's no other way to get you there." And they get there and they're like, "We don't understand how she did what she did, but she can't break these stitches open again." So I learned a little something where my limits were, and my parents also were like, "She's a resilient kid," and I learned that the doctors were there; they could help. They're absolutely needed. There's things that they were doing for me that really helped and gave me some information. But I also learned that they didn't know everything because I was defying their prognoses at every turn. And fast forward, I ended up playing, like I said, Division 1 sports in college. I was an athlete the whole time, and I actually started to probably take for granted my physicality until I got older and things started to break down. And I still had an opportunity to be able to, when doctors were telling me that I couldn't, um, be able to bring myself back. And I remember I had an injury at work. I was working as a first responder by now, had a really severe injury. I tore an ACL, went back without surgery, worked for 10 years in that dynamic environment, and then tore the other one. And when I tore the second one 10 years later, I was like, I have to get this done. And at that time I was doing triathlon, I was running marathons, I was doing all the things. And I was like, I can't even walk without, falling. If I jumped, it was a 50-50 chance of whether I would land or be on the ground. And I was like, I have to get this taken care of. And I got the first knee done, and, at that time, I was a Nike legacy runner, so I wanted to continue that because at that time, you had to get into a lottery to get in that race, but if you were a legacy runner, you just signed up and they gave you your entry bib, and so I told my doctor, "Let's space these out because I wanna be a participate in that, and if I have to walk it, I'll walk it." But I ran it, and I ran it in 2 hours and I wanna say 45 minutes, which, considering that I had had surgery on my ACL, a replacement and a meniscectomy in May, and I was running that in October, that I was doing pretty good, and I did it in 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I was in my 40s, and so, I was like, That's great. I don't have my next surgery till December, so how about I run the California International Marathon?" Which is not a good idea, and I made it to mile 18 before my knees were, like, swollen. I was having, issues with muscle spasms, and I was like, I way pushed it. And I ended up having to walk the last, 7 miles, 6 miles, 7 miles, and that was tough. And again, I learned some things. So after that, I ended up they were, the doctors were like, "Okay, well, we wanna get you back, but we're just not sure. You are getting older, we'll see what happens." And so I got scared, about how hard to push myself. And so I'm telling this story this way because I think for specifically for athletes and highly active people, we have this tendency, specifically when we get hurt, that we either do way too much or way too little, and we can never find where that sweet spot is. And when we try to talk to the doctors or practitioners, and if we are aging, a lot of times we're just told, well, this is your new normal. Well, you abused yourself when you were younger, and now this is what you're left with. And I watch so many people around me, that really take that to heart and stop doing what they love. And either they're not able to do what they love and they're supplanting it with something else, which then becomes a chore. It feels like a chore and they're not just quite as vibrant as they were. Or they say things like, I just can't play with my grandkids that way or my kids that way. I can't go up and down stairs. They're thinking, about how to plan when they're going to at any activity with friends. They'll do it, but they're thinking ahead. And I know this, I did this. What is it going to look like? How far are we walking? How many stairs are they? Where are we sitting at? What kind of seating is it going to be? How long will I be sitting or standing? You're thinking about all these things because it can cause pain and discomfort, and you're not moving as much as you should because you're not able to do the things you enjoy, right? And so it
Mhm.
becomes this cycle that actually drives you down the rabbit hole. On the other hand, I have my formal training. I had my training as a athlete, and I also by this time had my certified personal training and corrective exercise certificates and certifications, and nutrition as well. And I started working through what was I not applying to myself, right? And there's so many times we learn these things and we're great at giving advice to other people, but we don't actually apply it to our own lives, right? And
Yes.
so I was like, okay, how much of this am I not applying to myself? And I thought about it and it was a lot because my head was still telling me that I was going to be able to do the things I could do before my injuries. And I clearly wasn't because 10 years had passed. I'd gained a lot of weight and I wasn't able to do hardly anything except for go to work and grind. And I was finding myself becoming less and less happy and fulfilled, right? Because I just wasn't vibrant in my life. And so I started to apply these things to myself. And interestingly enough, these things, some of this stuff is small adjustments, and they make massive, massive change. And I noticed that one thing was a less is more approach, especially by this time I was 53. And so a less is more approach was definitely what I needed to do. So instead of trying to get out and push through and grind and run when I felt run down or when my body didn't feel up to it, I had to learn that that wasn't being disciplined, that was being obstinate. I just wasn't listening to my body. My body was telling me what it needed, and it needed to rest or it needed to do something that was less intensity, and I was pushing it to do something that it didn't wanna do. And so as I was telling my body, "Listen to me, I want you to do this," my body was like, "I'm really trying my best and I do, but can you listen to me? Because I need this other thing." And at some point I learned that I really need to listen to my body, and when I did, my body responded, and less than in 6 months, about 6 months, I shaved, 45 minutes off my half marathon time, and I lost like 50 plus pounds. I had gained a considerable amount of weight, and I lost 50 plus pounds in like 6 months. And it was like magic. And I thought, okay, I really need to focus on this thing and how I'm moving and how I'm training my body. But then I had another injury at work, and I brought this new information in with me, and I started working on it again, and it was giving me some success, but again, I had gained a lot of weight, and I gained weight in places that I wasn't used to, and I didn't understand. People were telling me, "Well, you're now at the age that maybe it's, time of life, and you're going through perimenopause and menopause," and I was like, "I'm not in menopause, I'm literally on my period right now, so that's not the
Yeah.
thing," and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and lo and behold, I end up in, functional medicine, and that was a whole story of how I ended up, working with Rachel Shear, and in functional nutrition, and, I kept saying that, I felt like there was a lot of focus on the gut, and I was like, "I don't have gut problems. I don't have, gut problems," because I didn't have any of those, symptoms that most people talk about. But what I did have was adrenal fatigue. I had brain fog. I had a lot of things going on with my central nervous system. I was on long-term NSAIDs from the injuries. I was also on long-term antibiotic use from illnesses I'd received, on and off at work. You don't think much about it, and all these things are happening. But the damage that those things did with having shift work, aging, chronic stress, high chronic stress, from various aspects of life, the job included, the long term use of NSAIDs just wreaked havoc on my body. And what was happening is that even though I was eating well and I was exercising at the capacity I could, my central nervous system was wackadoo, right? And so I was fighting it. And so no matter how good all that other stuff is, if your central nervous system is whacked out, it's going to hang on to things, and it's messing with your hormones, it's messing with your brain, it's messing with all kinds of organs in your body. And so when I applied that piece to the movement plan, nutrition I was already doing, same thing happened. Weight just starting to come off again. And again, this time I gained even more weight than I had on the last one because of the new changes in my body. So now I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, this is like people are struggling and no one's looking at like your inflammation markers in your lab testing. No one's looking at sleep patterns. And especially if you're a shift worker, being told to sleep 8 hours a night during the regular circadian, you're like, I work at night. That's not a possibility. But we don't talk about how to support a shift worker because there's ways to support it. You may not be able to get rid of, and you probably won't get rid of your problem, but you might be able to get it so it's manageable and it's not wrecking your entire life, right? We talk about diet, but even that word diet ends up for a lot of people bringing up a bunch of negative connotations
Mhm.
because we've just a lot of these words have been weaponized, right? Including discipline, right? That word has been weaponized that if you're not disciplined enough, which is your fault, something you're doing, then that's why you don't want it enough. And it could just be that that discipline you think you're trying to apply to your body is what's creating your problem because you do have inflammation and you aren't sleeping and you do have high stress and you're not giving your body any rest. And you're like, I have to be disciplined and push my body further, and you're adding to your problem. And what you really need to do is take a breath. I mean, like a breath, right? The deep
Yeah.
breath, the vagal breath, right? Box breathing, all these things that help to regulate your nervous system, to help calm you, to help your heart rate and your blood pressure get in a manageable state that brings you out of a sympathetic state, that brings your body out of like that fight or flight mode constantly, and puts you in the rest and digest mode, right? The parasympathetic mode that allows you to be able to lose weight, to make strength gains, to actually restore your body. And so now, here I am, all these many years later, leaning into this because I really think it's a piece of our health puzzle that is getting some more traction right now, but it's not something that's talked about specifically in Western medicine. In Western medicine, they're looking for a way. There's an illness, there's a problem, there's an acute injury. How do we treat it with surgery? How do we treat it with the medication? And that's fantastic when you're having an acute problem right now. But when you have a chronic issue that's lingering, our system isn't set up to really deal with that very well. And a lot of our physicians and practitioners want to help, but they often just aren't trained. Like my spine doctor, he's constantly talking to me about nutrition and whatever and diets I should be on and I should try. And he's a spine doctor and he's fantastic at it. He's not a nutritionist. He's not a dietitian, right? And often in our conversations, and I say that no shade, I love him. He's an amazing person and he works well with me, but he's talking about he Googled stuff and you know what I mean? Like he's like, I
Yeah.
was looking it up, and yeah, he's looking in, scientific journals and stuff, but he's still trying to figure it out right now. And a lot of times our doctors they're trying to figure it out right now. They're not asking the questions that necessarily need to be asked. They're not running the tests or looking at the tests that need to be looked at for a specific. They're looking at the big stuff, right? They're not looking at little things like if you're an active woman, what is your ferritin and your iron level, right? And they're like, oh, you're in range. And you might be in range, but you're really low. And if you're trying to run a half marathon, you are not going to be sufficient. You don't have enough. And ferritin is your iron stores. You don't have enough iron stored up for you to be out doing endurance athletics. But if you go to the doctor and they look at it, they're like, you're fine.
Mhm.
And so being able to look at different markers, at the relationship between markers, right? The ratios, because sometimes it's not the markers themselves, it's how they're working together that make the difference. And so getting that certification and being able to understand functional nutrition and also to be able to interpret labs and to be able to order labs for people, I think is huge. I know for myself, literally, I had to figure this out for myself because I went to the doctors a couple of times. I actually landed in the emergency room in March for something, and they basically told me I had end stage chronic kidney disease, which I knew I didn't. And my mom had kidney disease and was on dialysis. And I was like, well, I'm extremely muscular. And I also supplement with creatine. And the doctor was like, that's not it. And I was like, I know I'm overweight right now, but I'm also very, very muscular. And you've changed some of the they've changed some of the testing calculations so that they used to account for muscularity in that particular test, and they don't anymore because they felt like they were not catching enough people that were heading towards chronic kidney disease. So he's freaking out. He's got me freaked out, talking about I need to go to a nephrologist, to check out my kidneys and all this. And I was like, well, there's another test you can run, and it doesn't take into consideration, my muscularity or supplementation. Can we run that? And he just refused. I was able to run it for myself, and my kidneys are fine. They're actually really, really healthy. We were opposite ends of the spectrum, and the biggest issue was because he didn't really believe that I was as muscular as I was saying I was, and this test no longer accounts for muscularity. And what that is that basically you have muscles, and it's looking at muscle waste. If you have more muscles, you're gonna have more waste, right, from your muscles. And he was telling me, no, it's not. So these types of things are the things that I think make it hard for people to kind of navigate for themselves the system. And when you get on internet and you get on social media and people are telling you the only problem is your gut, your big problem is you don't move, stop eating sugar, don't eat anything white, you all have to be on this diet or that diet, it's only about your central nervous system, and trauma response. I, I am a believer that it's a combination of those things. And
Mhm.
what thing for you stands out to be the leader is about you, right? So if you are a person whose central nervous system is extremely dysregulated, you're going to have to lead into that piece first before the other pieces matter. But if you don't have a lot of high stress and your central nervous system is kind of is in a good place, but you're eating terribly, well, then you need to eat better, right?
Mhm.
How that works for a particular person is based on that person. And it's one of the reasons why, for me, when I work with people, and I've started to change the language even in what when I speak, is that it's highly personalized. It's not just an individualized plan. It's highly personalized because it is 100% about you. Because what works for the person sitting next to you, I don't care if you're in the same family, may not be what's going to work for you because they may not have going on inside their body what you have going on inside your body. And if you have the same stressors, you may respond differently to the same stressors. And I mean that meaning physical stressors, physiological stressors, psychological stressors, nutritional stressors, whatever they are, your bodies are responding differently. And so we have to figure out what's going on with you to determine what's going to be your best next step.
I love that. You said so many great things. I want to piggyback all the way back to the beginning. When you said that it was even when the pregnancy, your mom, your health issue started, and most people don't even relate to that. But I've been reading some stuff. I was actually, when my mom was pregnant with me, she had a horrible pregnancy, a lot of health issues, a lot of problems. I was actually born early. They didn't even know she was pregnant till she was 7 months. They kept saying she was had an ulcer, and she's like, "No, it's my third child. I know I'm pregnant." All kinds of things, but way back then they didn't really do all the tests correctly. It's called practice. My husband always says it's called practicing medicine for a reason. They're practicing. You're just a guinea pig. But with all of that, and I can relate to what you said is the struggles that you go through. It starts when we're in the womb. And then we go in, I was born early, and it was a whole other issue. I was born at home because I was not supposed to be born at that time. It was a whole other issue, and so they kept me separated from other kids. But when they fed us, they brought us all together because I was already exposed to the outside world. But when they fed us, they put us all in the safe area. So it was really weird. But I did a lot of the same, struggled with a lot of the same health issues that you talk about. Um, but just not necessarily the same issues, but I have thoracic scoliosis on the upper part of my body. And all of these things, and people saying you can't do this or you can't do this. I got diagnosed with arthritis at a very young age, at 20, in my neck, and you can't run marathons, you can't do all these things. And I was successfully able to run and walk. I don't run the whole thing. 10 marathons. I've done two
Nice.
two triathlons and almost about 60 half marathons. But then, you talk about shift working. I went and started got a promotion, worked as a branch head, and then, had those long 12-hour shift work, 6 days a week, gets you really fatigued. You only have one day off. You sleep on that day off. And so my body really went into it was like really in prime shape and then went out of whack. And then, I had a cancer scare and had to go through surgery. Lots of other things happened. So then I go get forced into menopause. But I love how you said that when you do all of these things, they look at the labs and they say, okay, you're in normal range. When I had I had ovarian cyst, and I kept having the cyst, and I was like, I need a test done. Yes, I have a cyst, but I want to make sure it's not cancerous. I demanded I think it's called the CA-125, and my levels were elevated. And then they ran it again, and they got higher and higher and higher. And I was like, the markers are going up. There's something extremely wrong. And I did have a very large mass, which led to the surgery. But I have been, because of all these things, I have not been placed on hormones. I don't have ovaries, and I haven't been placed on these things. But when I have the fatigue or the chronic stress or the chronic back pain from the scoliosis and the arthritis, they want to prescribe me these medications to treat the inflammation, but it's not like really helping. I'm dealing with weight gain, and I'm like, I need my hormones looked at. You're in range. What does range mean? Look at this, test me periodically and look at the range. Is it increasing? Is it going up or down? Or what are my levels? And those are the things that a lot of people don't do. And you have to fight. And it's actually been going through, by doing this podcast, I've been, interacting with a lot of people, and they're like, doctors and all these, and they're like, no, you have to look at these series of ranges, and you have to look at what are the markers. um and it's all these things that people don't even think about. And I love how you also said you can't do what somebody next to your family member is doing. And right now I'm the only female in my house, and I'm like, you guys, I can't eat what you guys are eating. I can't, I have to eat at a certain time, by a certain time. Just because you guys are doing this doesn't mean I have a whole different type of body dynamic than you guys do. And I love that
Right.
you're sharing that, and you're helping, and you're personalizing the plan to the person, not to the individual, but down to like, what is your makeup? What is your testing? What is your lab work doing? I love all the things you're doing. And so how do people get to work with you? How do you get this started?
So right now, I'm actually revamping some things, and I'm actually, because for me, I'm going to be full transparency, because of how deep I want to go with people. I'm not required to be HIPAA compliant, but I want to be. And
Mhm,
so I'm actually setting up and moving as much information as I can into a new portal that is HIPAA compliant and set for medical records
mhm,
and things like that, so that any of the stuff that we're sharing back and forth, is encrypted in a whole other way than the methods that I have been using. They're very secure, and it's a high level of security, but it's
mhm.
not that high, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it would be perfectly fine for me to utilize what I'm using, but just because of the person that I am, I want to elevate that some. And um and i'm and i'm adding some things, so people can definitely come and listen. I'm starting my podcast back up, because obviously I'm going to be adding this piece to my podcast, and I play mostly on Instagram, which feeds to my Facebook. um and so people can find me there to get information. And what I want to do is start sharing more and more information, for free, online. But if people really want to work with me, they could just reach out, DM me, social media, and we can connect, and we can get started doing some things, possibly, or if it needs to be something more in depth, then we'll probably be waitlisting some folks until probably, I want to say, maybe October, November, when things should be probably ready to go. But until then, I mean, if somebody is in dire need and really struggling, I don't want that person to just struggle. Um, I'll see what I can do, right? So yeah, that's kind of the thing. But I want to do this right. I really want to set it up, because the vision that I have for this is really to be um, able to work with people in partnership with their practitioners, right? So that we can share information and we can work together, because some of this stuff practitioners really do want to do, but they can't. Our insurance model right now, doctors are not leading the charge, the insurance companies are. And
Mhm.
so I had a physical therapy session at the beginning of January, and this is when I was starting to believe again I'm not going to be able to run anymore. And I just, things were really hard, and I wasn't getting anywhere, and I wasn't sure what was happening, and I wasn't getting the therapy I was supposed to. This was just such a struggle, and so finally I got to approved for everything I needed to get, and I went in and I interviewed, like I was interviewing physical therapists, and then I found one that I liked, and then when he saw me, he was like, our first session is just going to be intake, and it was literally an hour and a half of intake, and I can't remember the last time I had an hour and a half that I even had 20 minutes with my doctor without them going, "You talk a lot," right? My point is your doctor's supposed to be asking you these questions so that they can actually do better. They are using their intuition off of what you say. They have gotten all of this expertise and experience and tutelage, and then they take in the information and they're able to synthesize that and put it out. But what's happening is there's a breakdown in taking in that information from the individual, because insurance companies and employers want them to see more patients, and they have high patient loads. So they can only spend a certain amount of time. And in that time, they don't have the time to ask about your history of your lifestyle. They're asking you about your medical history, which is about the sick care stuff. Have you had any other injuries? Have you had any other illnesses? What kind of medications are you on? What kind of surgeries have you had? But they're not asking you, what do you do for fun, right? What do you want out of this? What are your goals? They're not asking those questions, and so it's harder. So when this guy sat down with me for an hour and a half and we went through all these things and we were talking and able to use shorthand, because I was like, listen, I have this going on and blah blah blah, and I was like, this is what it feels like to me, but I can't see me. And so he'd be like, okay, walk and do it. Oh yeah, you totally have this, but you also have what, and I'm like, I didn't know that. So because I can't see myself, and what I'm feeling isn't always what's actually happening. So it was fantastic. And literally, this guy worked on me for 15 minutes and I was running 3 days later.
Oh, wow.
3 days.
I
For 2 years, I was struggling to even push off to get one step. And that day when I came home, my body was like, I want to go for a run. And I was like, we're not doing all that. I had to talk myself out of just running out of the house. 2 days later, I was running. That's just about asking questions and paying attention to me as an individual and not projecting. And there's not a lot of that happening right now because insurance is not allowing for that. And that's a shame. And some of the practitioners want to help, but they can't. And so I would love to be the person that's like, hey, when you go to your doctor next, these are the things that you should be asking. Better questions, right? Better information. Um, Being able to be succinct and get them what they need. Being able to ask for things. Hey, you know what? I've been hearing that this could be going on with these things. We've looked at these markers, but we didn't look at these. Can we look at them? And being able to talk to the doctors to get some of these tests done through the insurance as they can, because you can get them outside through me or people that are like me that work in this in functional nutrition and functional medicine, but it's not, the insurance won't pay for it, so now you're paying out of pocket. And some of these tests are less expensive than others, but if you really want to really get a good look under the hood, it could get very pricey, right? And it could be cost prohibitive for some people. And I think it's ridiculous that it comes down to whether or not you can afford to pay for your own tests, because the insurance companies don't want to let doctors do what doctors do. Um,
Yeah. I love how you said all of that. I think it's really important. There's a couple of things that you said. Going back to even like when you're talking to your spine doctor, your doctor, he didn't go to school to learn how to deal with nutrition. He's like, his expertise is the spine, which is like you don't go to a mechanic, you don't go take your car to a mechanic because your brakes need to be done to a person that does body work. Like that's not their specialty. And so I love how you put it that way about your spine doctors talking to you about stuff that he researched, which is great. You research and a mechanic that takes your car. I work 25 years in manufacturing, so I always use like manufacturing aspects. But yeah, the body shop might know a few things, but they're not going to learn they don't know how to do all the brake work, right? They can do
Right.
fender work and stuff. And I love that you're also telling people like when you go that you're right with the insurance model. Like I have been like going through some health issues myself and just recently had pelvic reconstruction surgery and all these things. But to get to that point, I had this issue for 4 years before somebody was like, hey, you have an issue. It was like, oh, just do this, just do that, or let's give you medicine, or let's give you this, or like all of these things because they don't really want to sit with you. And then you have to find the right doctor, but even then you find the right doctor and then you're excited and then they leave because some issue with insurance or this and that. And you're having to constantly, it gets really hard, to kind of constantly try to remember everything that you said, or, with the doctor or your whole history and stuff like that. I do have a friend who created this great carefolio to keep the track of all those things. And I think that's important because we do need to do things like this and like provide the history for not only ourselves, but also for our generation to come, like our family members, like, hey, your kids, this is what's going on in our health. These are markers that you need to look at. So there's so many great things of what you're doing. I think is so important is that you have to be the advocate for yourself. And if you can't be the advocate, that's where you come in and say, hey, make sure you get these tests done and make sure that you're talking to your doctor about these markers or, like really spending that time to help that person advocate for, help them. You're the advocate for them. One of the things too that you said I think is so important is that you may want these tests, but your doctor's not going to order them. And so where you can come in and you can help them with that. But the problem is you have to pay it out of pocket. But I want people to understand that yes, you may have to pay out of pocket for these things. But what is it gonna cost you? Is
Right.
it better to prevent now, or what's it gonna cost you in the future? I teach time management, all about that, and everybody's telling people all the time when they don't like, "Oh, I don't really I don't have time to go and manage my time." You're not gonna get your time back. You cannot take that time back. You cannot our hours, our seconds are wasting away as we speak right now. The same thing with our health. Like if you don't take care of these things, what's 10 years going to look like for you? What's 15 years going to look like for you? Or can you get the tests that you need and actually help yourself now be preventative and help yourself do the things so that you can play with your grandchildren or your great grandchildren, those are things that are really important and people really need to realize that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I think that one of the things that's so, crazy about this whole thing is that I think people are exhausted, right? Like at the end of the day, people are exhausted and don't know what to do next. And we talk a lot about choose your hard, right? Like
Hmm.
it's going to be hard. Well, it's going to be harder if you try to go the easy route. You're going to have to deal with something harder on the other side. So choose the hard you want to deal with. And I think with regard to financing things, it's the same thing. It's going to be expensive at some. There's going to be a cost. I'll say that. There's
Hmm.
going to be a cost. Choose your cost. Is it going to be the cost you choose that you intentionally put out there and finagle for yourself, or is there going to be costs that you're given as a result of not taking some sort of action for yourself? And there's also things where I watch people, we hear, oh, take probiotics, oh, you should do this, and there are trillions, multiple trillions of bacteria in our stomach. There's more bacteria than cells in our gut and in our bodies. And when you talk about a probiotic and you're looking, there's a couple of strains that they tell you about, but within those, there's multiple strains. But we hear about the big three or four that are in like yogurts and things like that. You're guessing, you're basically putting an eyedropper, trying to empty the ocean with an eyedropper by popping some probiotic, and you're guessing, right? You're guessing. Being able to know if you have some sort of dysbiosis in your gut, where the problem is, now your tip of the arrow deciding which probiotics are going to be more beneficial for you than not. And we also have to take into consideration, like for me, what I found is that I had very minor, like moderate dysbiosis, some overgrowth of some helpful bacteria. There was just too many of some of them. When you get too many, then it's a problem, right? But it was just a couple. But the bigger problem was if I just tried to just address them, I had a digestive issue. I wasn't creating enough stomach enzymes, so my food wasn't breaking down properly. And also, I had a little bit of pancreatic insufficiency, so I didn't have enough pancreatic enzymes that were helping in the digestion of the food. So when I'm telling people I'm eating healthy, but I'm gaining weight and I'm tired and all these things, and they're looking at me like I got three heads, part of the problem was I wasn't absorbing any of the nutrients out of the food I was eating, right? My body was off. I did not know that until I got testing done. And then when I was able to look at the testing and look at the relationship between things, to be able to say, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. And by the way, this situation adds to the inflammation in my body. So when I start addressing that and my central nervous system and the inflammation in my body starts to calm, my body starts righting itself. So part of the issue is A, knowing what's going on so that you know how to target, and then B, making sure that you're taking supplements and eating the foods that are actually doing what you think they're doing. Because a lot of times people are like, but I eat all the whatever it is I'm supposed to be eating. And that's actually problematic for them because of what's going on, or whatever they're ingesting, their supplement or whatever, doesn't actually have in it what they think they have in it, or has additives, has things in it that they don't realize that is in it that's creating the problem. So there's like a whole bunch of other things to navigate that are also, once you are taught what those things are to look for, then it becomes easier to go to the store and realize that your favorite health food isn't healthy at all
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and choose something a little bit better.
We are constantly reading the labels on stuff and it says healthy, but then you see there's like seed oils and something and
Natural
sucralose and
flavors.
yeah, yeah. And so we're constantly like looking through those. And then we have our list like, okay, we already did the research. We know this is good and this isn't, and making sure that we just make better decisions. And so I think that's important. I love
Yeah,
all of this.
I went to a health food store when we were in Hawaii. I was like, "Oh, I left my fish oils at home. How did I do that?" And I go, "That's okay." They had these really cool naturopath health stores there. So I decided to go there and get some fish oils. And went in there and I was like, "I can't find," and I was reading labels and I was like, "Why can't I find a fish oil that's quality in the health foods, like the crunchy granola health food store, right?" I
Yeah.
was like, "Why can't I do it?" And so I finally found there's this giant bottle, was like $40. I was gonna have to leave it there. There's no way I was gonna get it home. And I was like, "Well, let me look." And I was like, "Xylitol? Why is there xylitol sugar, like an added sugar in the fish oils?" So I went to I walked out and the lady was like, "Oh, you're not gonna get the fish oils?" And I was like, "No. Do you know there's xylitol in there?" And she was like, "What?" I don't know if they changed their ingredient list or what, but even she didn't realize. I'm not putting getting a supplement like fish oils for omega-3s with
Mhm.
sugar added. Like, that's unnecessary. And it's surprising that there are things in your food that you don't realize. So when you think sometimes that you're doing really well, maybe you're not. I did a deep clean in my cupboard, things I've been buying for a long time. Like this one bread, it's a super healthy bread, right? It used to be. So I thought, right? I read labels. I saw something on a show and I was like, sugar. And I went and walked into my cupboard and flipped it over, and sure enough, there was sugar added into it that I had never noticed. And I was like, did I not notice this? Or is this a change the in their formulation? And then I took a bite, and I don't eat bread a lot, so I hadn't been paying attention, and I took a bite and I was like, yeah, it tastes sweet. And I had never paid any attention. I was like, well, I guess I'm not buying this anymore. And and there was a couple of things that I found in my cupboard that were like that. So sometimes we think we're doing well and there's just stuff that's hidden. And sometimes we don't know that certain things that are being masked as this is a health food isn't actually a health food. And so I've talked to some of my friends about supplementation and foods and trying to avoid the trap of I can't afford to spend $50 on, let's say, a good clean whey protein powder. I'll buy this because it has all the same stuff. And as a matter of fact, it has more of vitamin B or this or that. And it only costs $15 as opposed to $40 or whatever. And I'm like, they don't have third party testing. There's no way to tell if that's really in there. There's all this added stuff that's not going to be good for your gut. You're probably going to have flatulence, and also, notoriously, they just did some studies in 2024 or 2023, something in there, where a lot of these protein powders, especially the cheaper ones, are full of heavy metals. And so I'm like, and there's no way to tell. And you're not, you're basically burning your money. So you're trying to save money and you're actually wasting it by buying this product. And so kind of getting some friends to kind of shift their mindset away from trying to be frugal, right? And
Mhm.
making sure that they're not wasting their money on things. And a few have been like, you know what? I switched over and I'll be damned if I didn't feel the difference. Like I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do and I wasn't feeling anything and I thought maybe I wasn't working out hard enough and doing enough cardio and it was really the supplement was not working for me. So there's a lot that I'm really interested in now, and I'm very excited. As you can see, I'll go on and on and on forever, because I'm really excited about that. And I have not lost the movement piece because I still think that the movement piece is incredibly important. You can't out diet a bad exercise program, and you can't out exercise a bad diet. And so I think the two work together. And you can't do either one if your central nervous system is wrecked. I think the three things work hand in hand. And being able to discern which one of those things is the biggest priority for you, deal with that because it will unlock the ability for you to do the other two with success, right?
I love
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Well, we're gonna about to wrap up. So I love all the things that you shared, and I'm super excited. And I love that, I'll make sure that I have all the links so people can connect with you, particularly on LinkedIn. I'm sorry, LinkedIn, Instagram. So I'll make sure. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, and I always like to ask my guests, what is something that my listeners can do today in order to refine and shine? It could be a book, a phrase, something to live by. Uh, what's something you can think of?
So I think working on your central nervous system because that's something that's easy that you can do anywhere. And most of us, especially in our hustle and grind culture that we have right now, and especially what's going on in the country right now, people are stressed out. Right? There's a lot of stress, and a lot of people are sick, and that adds stress, right? And money issues. If we can help to calm our nervous systems and take us out of fight or flight, we can add into our capacity bucket, right? Our threat bucket get removed and we're able to do more things. So I think doing that and I have a couple of things that I think people can do easily to reset or to work on your nervous system like immediately. And one thing is just look at the sun, like not directly at it, but at sunrise or when the sun is at its highest in your area, look outside. If you can, go outside. And if you can go outside, if you can go out barefoot, go out barefoot and stand in your lawn. Stand out there for like 10 minutes. And if you can, stack it, do some breathing exercises. Those things, you would be surprised how much better and energetic and relaxed that you can feel after just doing that for 10 minutes. If there isn't sunlight, if you're in one of those areas like the Pacific Northwest and it doesn't get as much sunlight, or you can't go outside for whatever reasons, breathing is a big one. Just breathing. There's box breathing. You just breathe in deep through your nose for 4 seconds. You hold it at the top for 4 seconds. You breathe out through your mouth for 4 seconds, and then you hold it at the bottom for 4 seconds. And you do that for a couple of minutes is also a good way to help regulate your nervous system and calm it down. And then I like to do this one too, where you breathe in through your nose as deeply as possible for about 6 to 8 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out through your mouth, and keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until your lungs are empty. And you will feel in here where your vagus nerve is, you should feel a little vibration. And when you hit that vibrations point, it'll trigger your everything just to calm. And so I think those are things that are really, really easy to do. Um, and sleeping. Um, I think that we often equate time in the bed as to what we think is time is asleep, right? And I know I was doing this before, where you're like, okay, I went to bed. The last time I looked at the clock, it was XYZ time. This is when I looked at the clock. When I woke up, it was XYZ time. I slept whatever hours in between. That's not true. You toss and turn, you wake up through the night. I have some wearables now. I was tracking my heart rate variability. And I noticed that my sleep, I wasn't sleeping the way I thought, and I wasn't getting deep restorative sleep and REM sleep at the cycles I should. And that changed how I was looking at how I was sleeping. And when I focused more on getting quality sleep, I noticed a better restoration. So sleep is another one to think about. And if you could do any of those things to work on that central nervous system regularity, I think that it would be very helpful.
Oh wow, those are just all of those things that people can work on today. It doesn't, it's something simple and easy. I know that when I start to get a little bit stressed out or I'm not feeling right, my husband will say, "When's the last time you went outside? Go get some sun." Or, and I'll do that. And the breathing is so important. I do that a lot when I'm traveling. It just helps me calm down, and so I love that. And you're right, sleep is so important, and that's one of the things that I also measure because I think it's so important. And you're right, like you may wake up, you may um, do all these tossing and turning, and when you really look at the numbers, how much REM sleep you're getting, and everything else, you realize there's a huge difference in that. And so I thank you for everything, and I cannot wait to have this episode released. But thank you for being on today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Refine and Shine. We hope you find valuable insights and inspiration to fuel your journey of continuous improvement. Remember, the key to success lies in refining your processes and letting your inner brilliance shine. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your feedback is greatly appreciated and helps us reach more listeners like you who are eager to refine and shine in all areas of life. Stay connected with us on social media for updates and additional resources and behind the scenes content. We love hearing from our listeners, so feel free to reach out with any suggestions, questions, or success stories you'd like to share. As we wrap up, remember that the power to transform your life lies within you. Keep striving for growth, embracing change, and seeking opportunities to refine your skills. Together, let's continue to shine bright and make a positive impact in the world. Until next time, keep refining and keep shining.